TJ wrote this music.
It's the music.
It's great. Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Travis Eason, coming to you live from the 325 here in the storybook capital of America, where all your dreams come true, deep in the heart of downtown Abilene, Texas, here on Pine Street at the Majestic Coffee Shop, Neon Parrot Live Studios. I am your Sharp G, host of this Travi Wavi, where I get to the heart of what makes Abilene's heart beat. I'm your resident artist and local Renaissance man, and today I have a very special guest, friend, former colleague, mentor, and fellow artist, Gary Varner. Hi, Gary. How are you today?
It's great. It's great to be here.
It's great to be
It's
here.
going to be great to talk to you for a while. I haven't seen you for a while.
It's going to be great to catch up and to discuss some things. So I'm going to dig right into it. Let's get into storytelling.
Okay.
You are a master storyteller. I don't know what sort of certificates you have for what your license says you are for a storyteller, but in my opinion, you're a 5-star general.
Oh.
So tell me how you got started in storytelling and why that's become such an important part of your life.
Well, I think for me, storytelling is how you really meet people until you can start hearing their stories and them explaining them. That's you really need to hear them, and sometimes the best way to hear a story is to tell a story and get the ball rolling. And I like it on a one-on-one basis or in a small group where you get people going, and then they start generating a momentum and stories start getting told, and people will tell things they haven't told in a long time and reach back into their childhood and tell stories. And to me that really helps me get to know people. And I was raised. My dad was a barber, and I was raised in a barber shop. And that's how, as a little kid, I would get to know people, is go up and ask them questions. And once they asked me a question, I'd just keep going and then start telling me stories. And that, of course, my dad and the customers, they would be telling stories. And so it was always a rich story environment. And I just got used to it, and I liked it.
That's great.
Yeah.
And we were talking earlier, you mentioned that maybe sometimes you use storytelling as a coping mechanism. Let's dig into that.
Okay. Well, I'm dyslexic, and I didn't know that until later in life. And what I do is I feel more comfortable getting talking in stories than I do, just talking about myself. And I also find that I like to get to know people by telling stories, and that's how I cope with getting to know people, is by getting them to talk to me and to tell me things.
And you're the most amazing schmoozer that I've
Yeah,
ever met.
I
I've
used to
learned so
call
many
it
lessons
schmoozing.
from you. Just
Schmooze.
getting people to talk to you and telling them stories and getting them to tell you stories and playing who do you know and trying to make those connections with people. And part of that's because we're all connected.
We're all connected. I mean, we can always find somebody. Well, I think that whole thing with Kevin Bacon, 5 degrees of Kevin Bacon, it's so true. But we can do that almost with everybody, and you find connections, and of course with all the DNA that they've got going now, they had one guy publish a book where he has taken them and gone back, and it's amazing how people are connected. People you wouldn't even think, will be connected to Obama or Michael Jackson, and it's just through them maybe cousins of a cousin of a cousin of a cousin, but we're all connected.
We're all connected. That's pretty cool. So do you think that has influenced your decision to make theater a huge part of your life?
Oh, that definitely is a big part of it. That and theater saved my life, because as a child, not knowing that I had dyslexia, not knowing I had a reading problem, school was a nightmare for me. I was held back in the third grade. I don't know. They gave me the same teacher, which I don't know if she couldn't do it the first time. I don't know why they gave it to her again. But they, it was just hard. School was hard, and Thursday nights were the nightmare nights because Thursday nights when you study your spelling words. And boy, my mom and I would go, and I would be by the end of Thursday night, I'd have all the words right, and then I'd flunk the test the next day. It just wouldn't stay, and I couldn't understand it. And the teachers that were trying to help me, they'd give up, or they'd pile on so much extra work for me that it was just not worth it. And I became a class clown because I found that it was much easier to have people laugh with me than at me. And so that's part of the theater aspect and storytelling that got started there. And it wasn't until I got, my first theatrical experience was they were doing a production of First Love, which is about Samuel Gary at the University of Central Oklahoma. And they needed a young boy to play Romaine Gary as a child. And so the music teacher took 8 of us to go audition, and I didn't think I had a chance because I thought they'd give me a script and I couldn't read it well enough to do anything, but instead they did improv. And I blew that one away. And I got cast in that role, and working with those college students and being on that stage and hearing that applause, when I came out for the curtain call, I was hooked. That was it.
It's a fix.
That's a fix. That's the way people get started. And then I decided theater is what I wanted to do with my life. And high school was a nightmare. There's no reason for me to stay in high school. I mean, I should have dropped it because it was so hard. But the thing that kept me in there was theater. So it always bothers me when I hear people talking about cutting certain theater or high school programs because no, those are salvations for some people.
It's sanctuary for a lot of people.
Yeah, you got to be careful about that. But when I went to college, they told me not to go to college. My counselors, they thought I should try a trade school, but I wanted to do theater, and the only place I was going to be able to do theater was college. So I went and took the ACT, and we got the score, and I thought I did horrible on it. I thought 34 was bad, but I thought it was 34 out of 100, so I really flunked it. But that's not what the ranking is in an ACT. All I know is the counselors quit talking to me about it, and I started getting all these scholarship envelopes from OU and OSU and Central State, and I decided to go to Central State. But when I started going, it turned to be true. I couldn't do it. English, I was flunking English. I had an English teacher though, who, when he found out I was getting ready to drop school, came up to me and said, I have a test you need to go take. Because he said, I see something in you. So I went and took it at Dr. Dale Jordan. He was one of the leading diagnosticians in the country, and he gave me this test. And the most vivid thing I remember is the 50 spelling words, and out of that 50 spelling words, I got one right. And that's it, I knew. And so I went to start dropping, but before it went through, Dr. Jordan called me and said, come back in. So I went in, and he gave me another series of tests, and then he said, come in my office, and he set me down and said, you think you're stupid, don't you? And I said, yes, I do. He said, you're not. You're dyslexic. And he explained my whole life to me about all these little things that I did and why I did them. And I sat in his office for an hour and cried because the release of that was so strong. And then with his help and his tutelage, I can't say the word. Yeah, he took me. He wrote letters to the professors I had and explained what the handicap was. And in one semester, my grade point jumped from a 1 point to a 3 point because of the help that the teachers were giving. And they weren't really giving me much help. I had one teacher in Shakespeare said, look, I don't care. You take the test with everybody else. I will totally discount spelling. You just let me know what you're saying. And, I made a good grade in that class. And, but because of all that and that help, I was able to go through, and I got to do theater. And I just knew that that's what I wanted to do the rest of my life.
So you graduated college and then started teaching.
Started teaching, had a degree in teaching, and I had some mid-high kids. I taught mid-high, which in Edmond, Oklahoma, which was 9th and 10th graders. And I was also, because the almost immediately in college, the way I helped pay for it is I started working in the scene shop.
Okay.
And then I became the shop foreman, and then I started designing for them by my senior year.
Did you have much design experience before that?
No. No. I just learned it as I went.
Trial
But I
by
had some
fire.
good teachers, and so then the Oklahoma Shakespearean Festival needed a TD or a designer, and I went and auditioned for them, and they hired me to be in a show and come design. So I went there and designed a show for them and helped them through that season. And their TD was leaving, and they said, why don't you take it? And I said, well, I don't have an advanced degree. He said, well, we'll help you get one here. So I started teaching at Southeastern, and I got a degree in education, a master's in education. And that allowed me to teach classes full-time. And then I was also production manager for the Shakespearean Festival. And so we had a Shakespearean Festival at one point that we were a $250,000 festival. I mean, we
Wow.
were pulling people in
Yeah.
from all over the country to do shows, and I got to hire all these designers I wanted to study under, and they would come and we'd make great friendships, and they would show me things, and I'd get to hire scenic artists, and they'd come in, I'd watch them paint. And so I mean, I was getting a whole education that way. And I hired one guy from Tulane University named Marty Sachs, and we really hit it off. He was an incredible lighting designer. And at the end of that season, the next year, he called me and said, Gary, you really need an MFA. And I said, Marty, I have 3 kids. There is no way I can go to grad school at this point in my life. And he said, well, let me work on it. So they talked it over, and they worked on it with the school. And he called me back and said, look, we'll give you this much scholarship, which is pretty good. And he said, and then we'll give you a $9,000
Per diem?
a check
a
to
check.
pay to teach an acting class.
Okay.
And then the Southeastern found out I was doing it, which is where I was teaching, and they came up and said, look, we'll pay the other half if you will promise to teach here for 3 years after you get through. And the other big thing that made it really worthwhile, he said, the degree took 3 years, but they said the last year is an internship. You've been managing that Shakespeare Festival for 14 years. That'd be a waste of time. We're going to count that.
Nice.
So I went and got an MFA in 2 years
At Tulane.
at Tulane and met a lot of people there. Came back, worked at Southeastern for 3 years, and that's when Adam contacted me from ACU, and we moved the family here, and that was 27 years ago, and we've been doing theater here for that long.
For almost 30 years.
Yeah.
And then we met each other in 2001
Wow.
because Kate was a theater major, and I followed her here and started running a spotlight for her for Side by Side by Sondheim,
Sondheim.
with Jeanette Lipford, and
Amy Grant came
Amy
and saw it.
Grant was there for that one, and Clay Freeman was on piano. And this is in Sewell Theater, one of the last dinner show. Well, we did a few more in there, but a dinner show in Sewell, and I was tucked up in the house left lighting position spotlight right behind Clay, and got to know Clay and got to know you. And then you helped me. You helped start my career in many, many ways, and gave me opportunities, and I'll be forever grateful about that. But let's talk more about theater. So you've been at ACU. You moved. When was that? 1990. When did you come here?
1998.
1998.
No, 96.
96. And you were the design professor for ACU Theater
Right.
and
NTD.
and technical director. And do you have any idea how many shows that you did at ACU in your tenure there?
At ACU, no. I actually started trying to put together how many shows I've done in my life, but it's gotten a little crazy because there for a while when I was doing the Shakespeare Festival, I was doing 14 shows a year, and I probably did in Abilene I was doing about 8 to 9 shows a year, and then. So,
But even when we were doing like 9 shows a year at ACU, we were still helping the Paramount build
Right.
shows. We were still helping every other theater in
Yep.
town that needed help here or there, ACT, whatever it was. We just would go and
do
go
shows.
do shows for other people. So let's ask another quick theater question, a little trivia. What is your favorite Shakespearean play?
Oh, without a doubt, my favorite Shakespearean play is King Lear.
And how many times have you done it?
3. I've done it 3 times.
Would you like to do it again?
Oh yeah, in a heartbeat.
Is
It's another
ACT
one.
gonna do
It's
it?
another one for me, like Death of a Salesman. At some point, every time you see that show, you're at a different point in your life, and suddenly it means something different.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything changes.
Isn't that
You
crazy
know?
that story does that? Like you
Yeah.
can hear the same story 1,000 times, but if it's a good story, it's 1,000 times new story.
That's like they revised Our Town on Broadway this year, and it's getting incredible reviews. Nothing really happens in Our Town. It's just the story of these people in this town that, I mean, it won a Pulitzer, but every time I see that show, it affects me because it makes you think about where we're at and what we've been doing with our lives, and how that the most important thing in our lives are the people that we're with,
Relationships.
and that this small town of Grover Corners, they have that, and you see it, and so it's just really. I love those type of shows, and I think King Lear is that type of show. Every time, and it's on Broadway right now with
Is it
Kenneth
really?
Branagh.
Oh, that.
Yeah, it's. I would love to do that. And the thing is, we've never done it at the Abilene Shakespeare Festival because you don't do Lear unless you have a Lear in your pocket.
You got to have Lear.
You have to
Yep.
have a name or somebody can pull
Yep.
that one off.
You can't just ask one of your really talented senior kids in college to do that. You need someone that
You need to have
like
the
in our
age.
community, we would need a you or a George Levesque or someone else that's in the community that we all recognize. There's Scott Miller. There's a lot of
Yeah.
other people that could probably age-wise and carry the presence of that character. But
Right.
yeah, you can't just put a
Can't-
21-year-old kid in there with gray hair.
That's what Hamlet's for.
That's what Hamlet's for, exactly. Oh man! So when was the last Shakespearean show that you were part of?
I got to direct Taming of the Shrew again. It's actually a repeat because I did a production. I got started here doing this production because of a show I did at the Oklahoma Shakespeare Festival. This guy had wrote this story about a company of Shakespeare people who are stranded, and so they're doing one production to get home. And so they do this show, and all this weird stuff happens with the cast because so there's 2 stories going at the same time. Everything with the Shakespeare is very truthful and honest, but then you've got this other story on top of it that keeps getting things messed up. And so I developed a company like that and started doing shows for it. And Taming of the Shrew was one that I did, which was about a theater company that was stranded and couldn't make it, and there were the RSC, the Rockport Shakespeare Festival.
Rockport Shakespeare Festival.
And they were trying to get home, and not all the costumes arrived, and not all the people arrived. So they were just putting it together. So they introduced the audience to the company, and they assign the parts, and everybody leaves, and then it all takes place, and everything gets mixed up, and the music's modern. And of course, at the end of Taming of the Shrew, it's kind of hard sometimes because there's this incredible speech about the importance of what a wife is. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. And so I thought, well, that's what a lot of the audience members are going to be thinking. Let's just put it in. So I planted people in the audience. And when they did the speech, the guy stood up and said, "That's it? That's how you're going to end this? Are you kidding me?" And then someone from the other side of the audience, "Why? What's wrong with it? I thought it was really nice. It's romantic." And then they start having an argument. So the stage manager comes out, and they start trying to do it. There starts to be a big fight. And so the director steps out and says, No. We kind of expected this. We have an alternate ending. So if you'd like, we'll do that. And so we do this alternate ending, and what it is she starts singing Last Dance for, Donna Summer's disco song, and then we end up doing this disco dance, and that's the curtain call. And that was the last one I did.
It's fun. Alternative universes endings.
Yeah.
And when was that?
2 years ago.
2 years ago at ACU?
We haven't had Shakespeare for 2 years. We did.
Or did you do that at ACU?
I did it at ACU.
Okay. All right.
I did both of them at ACU. I did it in the Culp Theater, the small theater, the Black Box Theater, the first time, and I did it in Folks the second time.
And is ACU still doing the Shakespeare Festival?
I think so. It's still in the books, but I don't know. It's hard because we're a free festival.
Yeah.
That's under our grant, but it's expensive doing Shakespeare.
It's expensive doing Shakespeare.
And we really want to have we really wanted to have a theater company in Abilene where the people had the ability to do it and make a living doing it, or at least summer work. And so we had to get the scholarships worked out with ACU, and we had hired people in to direct and stuff like that. And that just got so expensive that we could only do it every other year.
We did some fun ones over the years.
Oh, yeah.
Some good
Well,
ones.
and you took it when I started going to do Creed.
Oh, yeah.
You took it over and
took it
started
over a
doing
couple
some
years.
really innovative stuff,
Yep.
like with Measure for Measure.
Thanks.
No.
Yeah, that was fun. Yeah,
Yeah,
Measure for Measure.
and just all sorts of innovative stuff. I mean,
We
it
had
was
fun.
great.
We played for sure. That's what I love about theater is it's play.
The play.
It's just play.
What was the one that we did? It was at Eurydice?
Eurydice, that was my senior direct piece.
Oh, man.
That
That
was
was
fabulous.
wild.
One
There
of my
was
favorite
water
shows.
everywhere.
One of my favorite shows. I mentioned that to someone recently. Sarah Rule, Eurydice. But
Yep.
Sarah Rule is a wonderful
Oh, yeah.
author.
No,
anyway.
she's good.
Great
I love
playwright.
Eurydice. I think it's an incredible story.
Let's stay on the theater track. So you retired, semi-retired or retired from ACU?
I am retired, but I still go back and do stuff for them. Like I adjunct teach the improv class.
Okay.
I don't know why they have anybody teach improv. And then I design for them.
Okay.
Some.
But you're on the board at ACT, Abilene.
I am
Community
on the board of ACT, and we have a show opening this week, the best Christmas pageant ever.
which was directed by my most recent guest, Andrea Robson.
Yes.
And she's wonderful.
Oh, yeah, and she's an incredible director. It's been really fun watching her take those kids and mold them and get this show going. And it is such a delightful show.
Best Christmas pageant ever is just cute.
It's cute.
Yeah.
And she followed our theme because it's from the 70s, and this year we're celebrating our 70th anniversary.
70 years.
We've been in Abilene for 70 years, and we thought, that's worth celebrating right there, is that we are one of the oldest community theaters in the state of Texas.
It's really cool.
And we are going to celebrate that this year. And so we picked all shows from the 70s.
Nice.
And it has really been kind of fun. We just got through with Death Trap, and it was well attended. And then we did Chapter 2, which is the Neil Simon 70s show, which did real well. And then the next one, and the one that we're going to have the big celebration, which is Butterflies Are Free, which is a beautiful, I think it's the beginning of Hallmark.
Oh, the beginning of Hallmark movies.
I really do.
The very first one.
But it's got some good meat in it too, because it's a struggle between a mother and a son, who's the son's blind but wants to live in New York by himself, and of course the mother is terrified of that, and of course his neighbor ends up being a hippie, a girl that's just free, free love, the whole thing. And of course, they get real close, and it becomes pretty funny.
It's a Hallmark movie.
It's a Hallmark movie
like
at the end of that one.
So that's coming up in the spring at ACT?
Uh-huh.
Okay. So you have, how many shows is ACT doing a year right now, on average?
We usually use anywhere from 8 to 9 shows
It's a
a
full
year.
season.
Yeah.
It's a full season.
Right.
And you're involved with every single show?
Well, right now I am. I'm the assistant production coordinator for them, so I help them put the shows together, and so I do get involved in most of the productions in some way. But it has it's been really good to watch the theater grow. They've got a really good board right now, and things are really starting to happen.
Good.
The theater's getting better. We're getting some grants. The city is helping us now, and we're starting to make the facility better. Larry Wheeler is there now too. He's taking care of facilities. He's done some incredible work in making it easier to do shows there. And so I've really, it's been good. I think it's important. I think that having a community theater in a city like Abilene is very important, because the community needs to have an outlet too. They need to have it, and it's interesting because community theater in America, there are more community theaters in America than there are professional theaters. There are, I think the last estimate was there was 9,000 community theaters in this country.
9,000.
And so we are helping keep theater alive, I think it's the only business I know that keeps trying to die.
It does.
But
Constantly.
nobody's going to let it die.
It's like a leper.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, being in the storybook capital of America, in Abilene, I think it's important that we have a strong theater community. And I wouldn't consider our theater community strong, but it is definitely alive.
Yes.
And with the colleges and ACT
Paramount.
and the Paramount, and then some of the traveling shows that come in with the Broadway and Abilene series at the convention center, and then all the children's. We've lots of different children's theaters and dance studios, and I think all of that helps to support the talent that we have here. We have a ton of talent in Abilene.
Oh, we do. It's amazing. The auditions are really. I'm shocked every time someone comes in and they haven't done theater for a while, and you went, why? Why are you haven't been auditioning? And I think it's really important. I think I also think, along with the storybook capital of the world and all the stuff that we do in the summer, or the Paramount, and then all the colleges do theater, I would really love it if we could work out a festival that we can celebrate and bring people in,
like a Fringe festival.
Yeah,
Yep.
have it where the people can come here and stay a weekend and see 3 shows.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Or do the storybook festival and then stay and watch a show at the Paramount, or show at ACU or McMurray, or
Maybe there's a way in the future to combine. Scheduling is always the hardest part, right? With anything, anytime you're trying to do anything, scheduling. But that's something that we used to talk about, is having a Fringe festival or a theater festival. I worked those in Minneapolis back in the late '90s, and it was super fun because you'd have in Minneapolis tens of thousands of people coming into town specifically to go watch different theater groups put on a show in sometimes really unique spaces too, maybe not even theaters, but
Right.
inside or outside. And it's a fun energy that kind of brings. It's almost the energy that we kind of experienced at the Shakespeare Festival at ACU, and to some degree by bringing in, because we would always audition, anybody, it was open auditions for the most part to the community. And it brings in that energy, it brings in that sense of collaboration and community that only theater can.
Well, and I think it's great too that it was a free festival, because
Mm-hmm.
we would end up getting a lot of people come see it that don't go see other things,
Mm-hmm.
because they thought, well, it was free, let's go try it, and then they end up being hooked, and they come back every year, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And of course, it was really nice that when we first started it, and it was in the amphitheater.
That was
Now,
before my time too.
technically, that was a living nightmare, but it sure was good when finally the sun went down, and
Mm-hmm.
the amphitheater was a great place to do the shows.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember people used to bring sofas and put them on the things, and they'd bring picnic baskets and
Have a picnic.
have a picnic and watch the show. And
That's great.
it's just, but the way the weather's been lately, it'd be like frying people out there on the concrete.
I remember the set that you had built for doing Shakespeare in the amphitheater was massive. It had lots of parts, and the biggest aspect, and again, I never had to assemble that with you or for you, but that the wind was the biggest factor, that you had to make it heavy enough, big enough that it wouldn't blow away in
Yeah,
the
we had
West Texas
slats
wind.
in it so that it had wind could pass through, and everything had to tie to everything else
Yep.
so that it wouldn't. Because the first one I did out there blew down, but that was the best production of Shakespeare that I've ever been to. We did Comedy Veras. It was our second performance. We're only going to do 2 performances, and the K-Texas weatherman was on a speed dial, and he called me. He said, "Gary, you're not going to make it." He said, "There is a storm coming in, and it is going to be a doozy. You're not going to make it." And so I talked to Steve Pounders, who was the director, and he said, we've got to, I guess, cancel this. And I said, "Hey, man, we worked too hard on this." He said, "Let's move it to Sewell." And he says, "How are we going to do that? There's no set, there's no lights, there's no nothing." He said, "Just trust me, and I can help you do this." And he said, "Okay." So I walked out, and we said, "Well, there's a big storm coming, but we are going to move to Sewell Theater and do our performance. If you would like to come, you're more than welcome." And I thought, well, we'll get maybe 50, 60 people to come see it, and everybody else will go home. No, they all came.
Everybody.
I mean, it was packed. We had people in the aisles and everything. And we set up a circle of chairs, and all the cast just sat down in the chairs. And as their part came up, they'd get up and join the group. And it was so fun, because the cast hadn't watched the show. They were all backstage, so they'd get tickled, the audience would get tickled, and it would just be this fun. We'd try to figure out things that we were doing, and it was just, this whole time you could hear this storm just going
Blowing.
nuts outside, and they all stayed through the end. And it was just an incredible act of sharing. The whole audience just,
The show must go on.
yeah, and it was just beautiful.
So when I first met you, your children were still young, and I had one of your daughters when she was in high school when I was teaching at Abilene High, and then got to watch all your kids grow up, and they're all married now, and most of them have had offspring. What's it like being a grandfather now?
Well, it is pretty amazing to be a grandfather. The one, and if you talk to most grandfathers, the nicest thing about it is you get to leave them with the kids and go home. Because kids, I'm a little too old to do some of it. We always leave going, how did we do this? Oh my God. And, but no, it's fun. And they are so much fun to do. And now I had all these stories that I have. So I have stories I can tell
That's
them.
great. How often do you get to see them?
We get to see him, probably, of course, now with Facebook.
Yeah, I get to see them pretty regularly.
Yeah, we see him all the time.
Cool.
And, of course, they call Mimi more than they call Pops, which is what mine is. And, but we end up talking together, and they are so much fun to be with, and we're gonna. And then my son Jeremy, he just got married, and he lives in New York, and we get to see him probably 2 or 3 times a year, and he comes back to Abilene and visits. And of course, his thing is when he drives in New York, that's his way. He calls us instead of playing the radio. He calls us, and we talk to him. So if he calls you, you know you're going to be on the phone for 20 or 30 minutes because he just talks. We just talk the whole way, which is great.
I like
catching up.
So going back to storytelling and communication, something that I learned from you, and I think maybe this can play into like where you're at right now and serving on different boards and your leadership positions in various roles. Something I learned from you is to take the time and walk the halls.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Can you expand on that?
Yeah, it's probably worse now than it's ever been because people communicate with email and text. My only problem with that is you send a text to somebody, they read it how they feel. And if it's got something you need to communicate and they're in a bad mood, they think you wrote it in a bad mood.
There's no tone.
There is no tone, and
text.
That's bad. And it may not be that bad, and it may be a whole lot simpler to deal with. And I got into this because when at Southeastern, the elementary department came and asked me to develop a course for them on creativity. So I did a lot of study on creativity, what it's like to be a creative. And it's funny because creativity tied to happiness and work abilities. And I started studying those, and I started getting into the business side of it. And there were some really interesting studies going on with it. There was a business in Sweden that was building a new building, and what they noticed was that people quit talking. They were calling each other, they were sending emails, or but nobody was talking anymore. And so what they did is they did the buildings. They put no names on anybody's office. They put a number. And so people would have to go, do you know where Travis is in? Yeah, he's in room 144. Oh, by the way. And they ended up getting in the hall, and they said it's amazing to them how much more business happened in the hallway than in board meetings.
MIT has proven this. Bell Labs used to do it. But it wasn't until you brought it to my attention about how important this organic meetings around is. It's so important that we get out of our little hives or our holes, and we actually go mingle and talk to our colleagues, or even maybe the colleagues in that department over there.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And then, and I used to go, like, if I needed to borrow something on campus, I would drive to their office and talk to them about it in person. Because if I just sent them an email, they could reject it really quick. But if you sit down and start talking and you strike a friendship, then it's a lot harder for them to say, yeah, no, yeah. They end up helping you, and I just think that's important. And oh God, James Carville, I think it's Carville. He helped Clinton get elected.
Yeah.
He wrote a book on business, and his thing was that those little business meetings you have in the hallway, he said, and stuff like that. He said there should never be a board meeting or a meeting that lasts longer than 20 minutes. If it lasts longer than 20 minutes, then you don't trust the people that you're working with. He said, in fact, you give an agenda, and before you even have the board meeting, it's probably all done. Because people will come and say, Travis, I hear in the meeting we're going to talk about this. What do you think about this? So you've already done it. All the legwork is done. So when you get to the meeting, well, we've talked about it, and I think we're going to do this. And it's done. And he said that's the best way to do it, is to get people to talk. And you can't do that with texts and email. I don't think.
No, it doesn't get you as far as face-to-face communication.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, and I don't think it works to have big meetings.
Yeah.
You know, like let's have a staff meeting, and it goes for an hour and a half. Boy, you've lost most of them. Mm-hmm. Because I remember our staff meetings.
Man. Adam, if you're watching this, we love you.
Yeah.
But boy, there's some slow bleeds happening every Friday. Lord have mercy. But we got through it. We still got the shows up. It's all good.
Well, and I found that the other thing is I like to go from office to office and just check in. Not necessarily about anything that the business is doing, but just to
How are
check
you?
in with them,
Yeah.
how they're doing, get a friendship going. So then when you do that with everybody. I do it with the music staff, and I would do it just. I think it's important. You find out more. You get a whole lot more information, and they also put a face to what you're doing.
Yep. It's great. I mean, we haven't worked together now for too long, since 2011. That makes me sad. But since that time, taking all the things I learned from you, like about these ways of communicating and storytelling, has been such a benefit to me. And I can't imagine going through life without those skills. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. You
Yeah.
helped me develop them too.
Good.
My favorite time of our life was when we would go out with a young audience.
That was a lot of fun.
That was just, you'd walk in and they'd have 300 to 400 kids sitting on the floor, and they'd look at the two of us and go, "Are you sure you're going to be okay?"
Yeah.
And we would
No
watch.
props,
problem.
no
We got it.
sound equipment, just two guys with some polos on and khakis,
And we'd start.
and we'd captivate those minds,
Yep.
fill them full of creativity. So you're talking a little bit earlier about linking creativity to happiness, and some of the, you've done a lot of work in creativity. What are some things that you think, what are some gems in that conversation that you want to pull up and share with anybody that's listening?
Well, I think that one of the things that we have to do, and to really have a happy workplace or to have a happy person, is you've got to give people a chance to exercise and create. I mean, we are creative people. Everybody does it differently, but there are things that we can do. But what happens in organizations is we get into a set pattern of everything that we do, and that pattern then starts working against creativity. You know, if you have to do something the same way every time, then you're not expanding and you're not going anywhere. And so there was a man named Doug Hall who I followed a lot, and he has a company called Eureka, and all these big corporations would hire him to have a retreat. And he guaranteed at the end, they paid a lot of money for these retreats, but he guaranteed at the end of that retreat, they would have a sellable product or have a solution that would be viable for them. This is a big claim. So I mean, we had people like GM, Pepsi, all these people doing it. He'd get them all together and divide them into groups. And the way he got the stimulated is he brought in artists, he brought in musicians, he brought in storytellers, and they were part of the groups. And they were all start discussing, but before they did anything, they had a big Nerf battle. And they got things going. They got laughing, and then they got going. And they just would do all these things, and he would break it up. And, you know, he always came in with bare feet and just would just really tear things up. And they would, no idea was too wild. And sure enough, by the end of that weekend, they had strategies going. And people were talking and breaking outside because it wasn't the normal pattern that they were used to. And it's going outside the pattern. And I think that's one of the things that I think if you have a business, you should never be scared to hire someone that's very ADHD or dyslexic, because for us to survive, we can't go from A to B. We have to go over to C, then to D, and then we're back up here, and then we'll come back down there. And on that way, we see things you don't see.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of people you want in there. You want these diverse thinkers so that we will be then stimulating creativity. And we get it. Because I don't know how many times I've been in a meeting at ACU and I'll pop up an idea and everybody will look at me like, where did
Oh,
that
that's a
come
Gary
from?
Varner idea.
Where did that come from? And then they start thinking about it going, that might work.
Mm-hmm.
It's just they don't see it because they're used to seeing this path,
Yep.
one path, and
Yep.
they go to that.
The
And,
divergent path is
that's-
sometimes the answer.
That's the hardest thing to do, and that's how you get the creativity going. And this class that I taught at Southeastern was incredible for me because I would have you had to be a senior in elementary ed to take the class. It was the last class they took, and they came in with their notebooks and everything ready for a textbook and the whole thing, and I wouldn't have chairs in the room, which just blew their minds. And they'd sit on the floor with their notebooks and their things and would start talking. And suddenly I would tell them, hey, this is about creativity and education and for children. I'm not worried about the kids. I'm worried about you. Because you guys have got yourself in this rigid set of a way you educate. And if and here's the thing, you have to be careful because if a teacher comes into a class, you end up teaching the way you learn. And if you do that, you've missed half the class because they don't learn like you. So if you don't find creative ways that we can get around that, then that's what it was about. So we would do things that they worked on creativity. We'd talk a lot about kids and how it applied, but we'd do things that they would do and things that they found so bizarre, but yet they would do it. But I had yet to do a class that I wouldn't have 2 or 3 people come up in tears saying, I have never thought of myself as creative. And this has just been, really eye-opening.
It is interesting how many people resist viewing themselves as a creative person.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I saw that some at my time at ACU with the various students that would come in over the years. But I mean, they're all theater kids, so they all knew at some level they've got some creativity in them. It just might be watering the flower a little bit differently or something for them to get them to bloom. But, as an artist and working in the community and people coming to me for a tattoo or whatever it is, and 9 times out of 10 I hear, I'm not an artist. I don't know how to, I'm not an artist. I'm not creative. But we all are so deeply, profoundly creative. And how we express ourselves, whether or not we're being conscientious of it or not, or being intentional about it or not, like that's the day-to-day theater of your life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and I think everything that we do, the people that excel in it have to tap into being creative. A good chef, what makes him different from another chef is his ability to tap into a different set of skills that are creative for him that make him work, It's just important. It's important to see. And it's amazing, I did have one scary moment in that class because I took it from a book by John Bradshaw, and he had this exercise, and I thought, I'll adapt that and make it work for the creativity class. And so they brought a picture of themselves as a kid, and they would set it on the table, and then they took out a piece of notebook paper, and I said, write that child and give them permission to be creative. And I had one girl start it, and then she crumpled the paper up and she left. And I had another girl who totally broke down. And the dean came and said, I need to talk to you, because that one went to the dean. And, oh, sorry. And so I went to the dean, and the dean said, what was this assignment? And I explained it to him. And he went, oh, okay. And then he called them in and said, listen, I don't think it's the assignment. I think that I think you need to go over to the counseling department, because I think there's some things that you haven't faced in your life.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't talk to herself as a kid. And I thought, that's the last time I'm going to do that one. Whoa.
Oh, man.
Because I didn't ever think that it would be that
Yeah.
shocking
Yeah.
to some people. But try it sometime. Look at yourself as a little kid and give them permission. It's enlightening.
Yeah.
Because things flood back to you
Yeah.
that you didn't expect.
Yeah. Like the art teacher that said, you don't know how to draw. That's
Right.
what most people quit drawing.
Right.
Right then and there. It's so sad. Oh, okay. So switching gears just a little bit and winding down our conversation. This has been so good for me. What are some of your visions moving forward for Abilene and being the storybook capital of America? And because you are a participatory person in it, you're a leading creative figure in our community, and you've always been super active. So, hearing from you what maybe some of your visions are moving forward could maybe help some of us.
Well, I love what Lib Barnett and them are doing with the storybook capital of the world, and I love how it's growing and progressing. I think that we got to get things that tack on to that help her and help us, that will give because my kids come and bring their kids, and they do have a whole day full of things, but there's some other things that we could tie into that. I think it is good that we have 2 organizations in town now that are producing children's theater around the country. I think that needs to grow, and I think that needs to get bigger. I think that the one thing about the Paramount, and I know they are so full now and they're so busy, but I helped start the Pollard Theater in Guthrie, Oklahoma, which is a lot like what the Paramount has done. They had an old theater that was a first-run theater. That's where they opened things, and they remodeled it. Not as good-looking theater as what the Pyramid is, but they put in a resident theater company, and it's still going. It is amazing how finally the town has jumped on board, and they have started really supporting it, and people have started coming from Oklahoma City to see shows, and from further away, which means that the hotel that was next door to it boomed because they had places to stay. They had a 5-star restaurant, and it grew. And those are the types of things that I think that I would like to see the arts do here, is to help everybody out and give people a reason to come to Abilene and spend time here and do things with all the museums and stuff. So anything that I can do to help build those up is something important. I mean, I was surprised. We went to Breckenridge this summer, and I got real excited because, and boy, I'm totally blank on the guy's name, but there's an artist from Europe that builds trolls. He builds them. They're massive. They're huge, and he loves to put them in places where people discover them by accident. And people commission. He has a group that works with him, and they commission it. And so you apply to them, and if they accept you, they build this thing. And in Breckenridge, they did, We went off the beaten path and walked almost a mile to get to this massive troll sitting, and the kids were crawling up in its lap, and it's all made out of recycled wood. And before he leaves, there's a group that their job is just to keep the thing up and keep it, like if
Maintain it and everything.
maintain it. But I sat there and watched all of these people coming out of their way to see this troll.
Just an art installation.
It's an art installation, but he's done them all over the world, and now he's starting to do them in America. San Diego has got one going right now, and I think, God, it'd be great if we could get one on that new path that we have.
The site, the Cedar Creek
Get
walkway.
one on there and tie it to the story capital, and maybe this troll has a huge book that he's reading.
Yeah.
Because once you get on the register, there are people that drive around this country
And they go
to
to see 'em
find
all.
those
Yeah.
trolls.
Yeah.
And then they connect with us.
That's great.
So, and I think the way it works, I don't think the people in Abilene pay for it. I think this organization finds you worthy, they'll pay for it. They pay his thing.
That's cool.
They have one in Michigan that is just great. The troll is laying. It's called the Fisherman. He's laying down, and his hair is real long, and it drapes all the way into the water.
Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool. Oh, yeah, I think that Abilene is. We're going to figure out what the heartbeat of Abilene is at some point. It might take another 10 years, but we're really moving forward as a community of creatives and artists, and there's a lot of really good things going on here.
I definitely think just seeing what's happening downtown and what you guys have been doing.
Thank you.
It's great.
Cool.
I want to see more of that.
So we're gonna plug the best Christmas pageant
ever,
and that
ACT.
opens tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night runs Friday, Saturday, and then a 2:00 matinee on Sunday.
Just 1 week or 2 weeks?
Nope. The next week it'll do the same thing: Friday, Saturday,
Okay.
and Sunday. And people, these kids are incredible in this. It's just a really fun story.
I think there was a little plug on maybe K-Texas or something yesterday or the day before,
Right.
where some of the kids were on there talking to one of the news people. That's really cool.
And then if you're interested, we're having auditions for Butterflies Are Free on next Monday.
Next Monday, who's going to direct that?
You asked me this one.
Ask you the hard
Tyler.
Tyler Sparks is going
Tyler
to direct
Sparks.
that. Okay, great. So we're really excited about ACT, and they're turning 70 this year, and that's a big deal. And then, are you going to be in it? You are in Best Christmas Pageant Ever.
I play the Reverend.
Okay.
It's one small little cameo, but
Yeah.
I get to come in and be a Reverend.
No, and then anything else coming up for you? You're going to direct anything, or
I am directing at the end of this season. I'm directing a farce that I love called "Not Now, Darling."
Not now, darling?
Just pure farce. It's probably a textbook example of what a farce should be,
Okay,
and it's just funny.
good.
I've done it twice, and I have never seen audiences laugh because at one point it just doesn't stop, and you just can't catch up.
That's great.
Yeah.
That'll be when in the summer?
It'll be in May.
In May. Okay.
All right. But the one I'm really excited about is that we do Butterflies Are Free, but then our show that we're sort of doing for ourselves is Equus. That's a big jump for us. And boy, that is a real deep one. It's like
a tough
doing
show.
Death of a Salesman
Yep.
again. It's one of those ones that you can't leave without going, wow,
Yep.
this is saying so much.
It really makes you think.
Yeah.
That's what I love about theater. It just tells the story in a way that it's hard to understand it any other way.
Right. And I just love that we don't have superheroes in him yet. Thor playing Lear.
Don't give anybody any good ideas. The next show we'll see on Broadway is
Yeah.
Thor, something weird. Well, can we have you back on the podcast at some point and catch
Anytime.
up and,
Yeah, I'd love
see
to.
what's going on? Thank you so much for
love
your
to.
time today, and
Enjoy being with you.
you're an amazing person.
Yeah.
And I'm really, really grateful for you. Thank you, my friend.
Love you, man.
So, guys, thanks for watching the Travi Wavi today, and we'll be back here next week with another special guest. And sayonara.
Well, that was a lot.